Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Emma, and I've got Heidi with me today. And we're going to be talking about leadership and probably the mindset that you need to be an effective leader. But before we get to all the questions that I've got for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emma. I'm Heidi Sirota, and today I'm working to build and connect capabilities that make it possible for more families to bring pets into their home and have the resources to take care of them for their full life. Pet surrenders are up. And so what can we do to really keep pets in homes and living great lives and helping the people that they live with improve their own health? It's kind of at the nexus of pet health and finance. So more to come on that. Previously, I was a senior insurance executive at 3 different Fortune 100 insurance brands. And in my last role, I led the nation's largest pet insurance business.
Great. Well, I'm so excited to have you here, especially on the heels of the wonderful keynote that you did at InsurTech Hartford. But I guess to get us started, I kind of want to ask a very open-ended question. And that's like, to be a leader, do you feel like you need to be good and effective at all of the things in the entirety of a job description or even like a discipline in order to effectively lead?
Yeah, no. I'm definitely not. And other leaders I know are not. In fact, it might make you less effective. If you're the tactician or the people that needs to be in every single thing, it really slows progress. A leader's job is about setting a vision, communicating, getting everybody on board, leading with courage, making those tough decisions, building teams, right? It's not to do all the work. There's some folks that, I talk to on the regular about advancement kinds of issues. And there's a person I know who says she's ready to advance. And at the same time, she is getting all of these certifications and all kinds of different things that make her stronger in, one kind of discipline and another kind of discipline. And it's really great to have all of those certifications and all of that education and be a continuous learner. But you don't necessarily need to be the expert, the certified expert in all of those things to be a good leader. In fact, it could bring you down because you're so focused on the delivery rather than the leadership. And then another person that I talked to, she says that she's ready to advance. And one of the things she wants to do to prepare is to get everything in order, like all the work done, the project done, everything perfect and pretty and tied in a bow. And my response to her was, well, what are you leaving for the people that are, might come up into your role? It's important to give them something to accomplish as well. And it's not necessary for you to leave everything in a neat little bow to advance. It's important that you've set up your team to follow through with the work that you've started, and you can then move on and develop new skills. Excuse me. So
I love the idea of leaving something behind for the people that are coming up behind you to accomplish rather than trying to check off every box. But one thing that I want to talk, and maybe this is going back a little bit to the presentation that you gave previously as well, that I got the opportunity to sit in on. But what do you think also the power of saying yes to maybe something that feels like just slightly out of reach in these scenarios? Maybe we're trying to get certifications and stuff to make ourselves feel comfortable moving into a new role. What's that power of saying yes to things that feel a bit out of reach?
Yeah. People are inherently risk averse. I think we all know that. There's a lot of resisting and avoiding change. But the bottom line is, if you want to grow, and not everybody does, so if you don't want to, that's fine. Do what you do and love it. But if you do want to grow, know that being comfortable is not part of growth. Those two things don't coexist very well. You've heard the old adage, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same results. And it's true. So it's important that we say yes to opportunities. Otherwise, we risk hitting a dead end. And, when you think about taking a risk, you should think about, do it strategically. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen if I take this risk? And it might be terrible. It might not be that terrible. It might simply be like an emotional feeling you get, and nobody really cares that you failed or something happened, right? So think about what's the worst that can happen, and then make a plan to recover from that if the risk becomes your reality. It's usually not as bad as you think it is. And failing is part of the game, right? You learn from failing. I read a stat that founders who in their first business and fail, and then move on to a second business, they are 11% more likely to succeed in that second business because of the learnings from the failure of their first business. So failing is a way really to incrementally keep moving ahead, and enables you to say yes to taking those risks. So important to know, there aren't participation trophies for promotions. If you really value being comfortable in your 9 to 5, you're going to become an expert in the work that you're doing, but not develop the skills to do the work that you want to do. So important that you see the difference between those possibilities and barriers.
So when we take a look at maybe going about taking on one of these challenges that feels big and we're setting a goal for ourselves, how do we break that down into different steps to make it more manageable and maybe like a little less scary to take that chance?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of goal you're setting. If it's, you're a leader and you're setting a goal for some project, for example, or something, somewhere you want to take your company, really important to first understand, and this is true in any circumstance, understand that achieving a big goal is usually just a series of taking little steps in the right direction. And again, even with failures that you learn from, those are steps in the right direction. And in a work setting or in a leadership setting, really important to bring people along with the vision, even if it feels unachievable or far-fetched or what have you. I tend to be a really big picture conceptual thinker. And so this is something I've had to develop, that people aren't in my head and they don't see necessarily what I see. And so really important that you break it down. First, I like tell the story, what this new world looks like when this project is done, right? What will our customers think? How will our employees feel? How will our systems work better? How will it solve the problem that we're trying to solve? Get that out there, socialize that, talk about it, be passionate about it. And then be realistic. Like, we have to build some capabilities to do this. We can't just like flip a switch, right? And acknowledge and be on the same sides of the table as people, that it's not turnkey. We all have to work on this. And here's the capabilities or the things that we have to put in place. And we're going to do it incrementally. And that's where you can start to break it down. And think, when you break it down, you move a little bit to tactical. Like, you start thinking about defining the work. So back to, what does this look like in the end? The outcomes you're trying to achieve. Decide and agree that this is where we're going, and start socializing it. And then go about organizing the work. And there's a lot of ways you can organize the work. A few things that I think about is sequencing. Like, how do I sequence these capabilities? What is dependent on the next thing or the previous thing? And, you should think about, is there another party that needs to participate in this? And do they have the bandwidth to work on it right now? Or do you have to think about that later because you have to, wait for that resource or that funding, or maybe it's seasonal or what have you. So just objectively think about the components that need to get done, and create that sequence of work that makes sense to A, execute, and B, enable you to put the whole package out in the market at some point. And then also think about, as you're prioritizing, like, I've heard of some people using things like an Eisenhower matrix, where you block out what's urgent, what's important, and, go to the top right corner. This is where I need to focus, and then do your sequencing from there. That's kind of like setting business requirements, right? When you work on a technology project, you have a big idea, you might not be able to get all of them in version 1. So you have to have your business requirements for each stage. So it's that kind of work. And then 2 other tips, for me, time boxing and calendaring. If it's on my calendar, I do it. So sounds dumb, but I will set a meeting with myself to do something, or urge others in the project to make sure it's calendared and people have time set aside uninterrupted for it. And then also just thinking about, there are so many things that take 5 minutes, like it's a one and done. Just set aside time to knock them out. Like, give yourself a half hour every morning to knock out those 6 emails that you need to send to people to get information to move you to the next stage of the project. You have to kind of break it up and not always just think, linearly, but like, how do I optimize these different things to help the work move forward together?
Thank you so much for joining me for the conversation, Heidi. And for anybody that is watching and is not already, make sure that you reach out and connect with her on LinkedIn so that you can stay up to date on that nice little teaser she gave us during the introduction. And certainly reach out to either one of us if you've got any questions. But thank you again for joining me, and for everybody for watching, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. If you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe and come back weekly for more expert interviews on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.